Boom, ba-doom, ba-doom, ba-dee-ba-da-ba. Bibbidi boom, bobbidi bibbidi bobbidi boom, dibbidi bibbidi bobbidi bibbidi bibbidi bobbidi bibbidi boom. Babidi boom, boom, ba-da 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 ba-doom, ba-doom, ba-ba-doom, ba-ba-doom, ba-da-boom, ba-da-ba-da. Ba-ba-da-da. Ba-ba-da-da, ba-da-ba-da-boom. Which kind of margarita would you like? I'll take it, papaya. Hey everybody, we're just getting set up here. File on in, grab yourself a chair, get a cold beverage. We're going to get back into what we do best, and that's doing stuff reasonably well. Boom, doctor, boom, doctor, boom. Ba-dee-da-bop, ba-dee-da, ba-dee-da-ba-dee. Ba-ba-doo-da, ba-dee-da-ba-doom, ba-dee-ba-dee. Dee-ba-dee-boop, ba-da-ba-da-boom, ba-dee-ba-dee. Dee-ba-dee-ba-dee-ba-dee-ba-dee, ba-dee-da. Ah-ba-doo-doo, ba-dee-da-da-da. Ha! Ba-ba-dow, ba-dee-ba-dee-bow, dee-ba-dee. Let's kick it. Ba-ba-doo-doo-doo-ba-dow. I got the skip, that biggie, and the doo-ba-dee-doo. Hey, I must now emerge from the internet. Oh, hey guys. Greetings, programs. Your old buddy Ingrid Burnall here. Didn't even notice you walk in the door. Too busy humming and scooting around, you know. Okay. Wow. All right. Hey, guys. Hey. Papaya. What's going on, everybody? Nice to see you again. No shenanigans, no silly stuff, no weird things. This is just Runehammer here, this whole deal. This is Runehammer. I'm your host, Ingrid Burnall, and we are going to get into some nuts and boltsy stuff for a very special day. It's June 21. You want to get your mind blown? It's almost the 4th of July. How about that? All right, no nonsense. If you guys stick around to the end of the stream today, we're going to muck about here for an hour or so. If you guys want to stick around to the end of the stream, we're going to talk about all the news and announcements about Runehammer, what I've been doing and whatnot, besides growing this crazy business on the top of my head like I know y'all are doing. But besides that, we'll get to all that stuff at the end of the video. Talk about some heady business, talk about what I've been up to, what I'm going to be up to, what's up and coming, and all that kind of good stuff. So we're going to do that at the end. Let's get right into the snazmataz of the yammy to do that with is this video is about using spawners in your game as a game master. We're going to do spawners. Get it? Father's Day, spawners. It's a little, it's humor is what I call it. Okay, looks like I got the wrong thing going here, so let's just get rid of that. And you're probably seeing pure, terrifying darkness right now. And I know that can be scary. Don't be scared. Don't you dare be scared. Okay, there we go. Just adjusting these. I can do this a million times. I never do it right. Here we go. Pow! Spawners! you know, and probably it'd be fun to have like a face in there too. I could put a face in. Look at this. You guys are just seeing it happen, seeing the magic happen. This is the level of, oh God, there I am. I'm going to hide down here. Okay. Hey guys, Ingrid Burnall here, the quintessential internet professional coming at you with spawners. Okay, let's just get into it, shall we? Let me kind of squish this in a little bit so I can see the comments throughout the stream, so that's good. I've learned my lesson with that stuff. Don't get crazy. Okay, spawners, here we are. First, I'm going to hit you with why I even want to talk about this topic. This is something I've been doing a little more in my podcast lately, and I want to do it right now. Like, why am I even hitting you with this? I don't want to just be like, yo, here's opinions. No, I need to back my theses up with logic, and that's what I'm going to do. So welcome to the Spawner's Workshop. Let's get right into this, okay? This is a 2-axis graph thing. Okay, so the most important thing to notice here is that from the left to the right, right up here, this is a scaling of difficulty. Okay, so this is easy, and this is hard. Okay, so take that into consideration. Now, before we fill in this entire thing, like I said, I wanna break it down why I even think this is important. And here it is right here. Okay, so premise one. Premise one is, how often is it that you hear about players abusing rest mechanics? Okay, so they want to rest in between all these different rooms, and they always want to sort of exploit the fact that rooms are kind of like fixed challenges that they can kind of control and in some ways exploit, and even sort of think in a sort of meta fashion, like outside the RP aspect of the game. And they can kind of, think, well, we know how D&D works, and so we need to rest again because we like having all our spells, this, that, and the other thing. Sorry, I'm just kind of getting this into an ideal layout here. We want to be ideal around here. Being ideal is good. So, if you agree with me on this first premise, and I think you do, when players use rest too much, it can take away a lot of the fun of the game. And that's not just because game masters want to make the game harder. It's because that is just, quite frankly, just not that fun when the excitement is kind of out of the room like that. Like you don't have a lot of breaks in the action in an exciting, fantasy film. It's not like they kill one orc in Mordor and then they kind of back out and they rest and then they go in and they kill a few more and then they kind of back out, recover some hit points. That does not make for a compelling story. I'm sorry. And players out there, sorry about this. You're going to have to wait until the story makes resting feel cool. But how do you do that? You can't just like troll them and railroad them. That's not going to work. So if you agree with me on premise one, and I think it's pretty easy to get you on premise one, then we can jump to premise two. Pow! If fixed challenge is lamer, then this is the logical symbol for lamer right here, is less cool than dynamic difficulty, then you're going to move to the next premise with me. Okay, I keep getting distracted because I'm like making sure the stream is working. I have such paranoia about like screwing up a stream since that one fateful day. Anyway, okay. Fixed challenge is not as cool as dynamic challenge. Fixed challenge is I'm going to go into a room. There's going to be 4 orcs in there because that's what I planned. And once the killers, or the killers, that's a Freudian slip. Once the players kill those 4 orcs, that fixed challenge has been exceeded. It's done, and that's it. Now they can kind of rummage about, look for some treasure, barricade the doors, and move on to the next thing. If that is more lame, then there are X number of orcs in the room, and the number of orcs in the room is determined by player action. And actually, these orcs multiply exponentially, or they get bonuses that go with their quantity. So when there's 5 orcs, they all roll +5 on their rolls. When there's 7 orcs, they all roll +7 on their rolls. It's a compound effect that makes them in groups become terrifyingly deadly. That, to me, just sounds more exciting and cooler. So, if fixed challenge, the first version, is not as cool as dynamic challenge, I got you on the first premise, or the second premise as well. Okay, so now I got you on the first, there's the second one, now we're going to go down to number 3. Kabushi! Now you guys know how I feel about this one. If RP, if role-playing and figuring out the game and the world and what's happening and the story and who you are in that story and what your role is, if that is cooler than just mash 'em combat, you just come into the room, there's 4 orcs, we smash them because we make pretty good rolls. I use my multi-weapon fighter feat and I chop this guy's head off and we're like, yes, man, we're such ballers, and we're done. If RP being, how does this room work? How are we going to find a way through here? There's no way to go back. We have to go forward. There's no time. Here they come. What is this glowing gem? If that is cooler than just boring old mash 'em up combat, I got you on the third premise. And now the fourth one, and this is a real doozy, and this one maybe is probably the hardest one to convince you of if you're not sort of part of the sort of, hankering kind of crazy mindset. If strain on your players, meaning danger, deadliness, low resources, low HP, overwhelming odds, bad consequences for failure, if this form of strain makes their role-playing more rich, you agree with me on premise 4. And what does role-playing more rich mean? I think, just based on experience, IMHO, that when players are they're in a pressure cooker, when like the forces coming at them are not relenting and they are on their own sort of time schedule. They're not like answering to the time schedule of players. This pressure coming in. It's a lot how they're called fronts in Dungeon World, right? You imagine a few fronts or factions that are always pressing in on the players, and it's creating multiple sort of times that are creating dilemmas and so on and so forth. As these forces press in, this pressure, this strain puts players more into character and gives them a more authentic reason to roleplay than leisure. Right? It's like, let's do some leisurely role play in town. You know, we're in the tavern drinking with the dwarves. We're victorious and there's not going to be another battle for 1 year. So we will carouse with the dwarves in a leisurely fashion. I think that RP will be weaker, will be less authentic, will be more jokey. Whereas under strain, especially where characters are saving each other's lives, like they're totally relying on each other for survival, at that moment, I think role-playing is at its very best. And I know this is a little bit controversial because, people have called me out saying, well, you can't just always put people in combat to use this pressure cooker to bring out their role-playing. Sometimes you just need to let them role-play in a formless environment. And yes, that is true as far as making sure there's variety. But I stand by this premise, even if I can't win you over on it, that never is role-playing more exciting, more authentic, and more emotional than when it is involving strain. Now, there are some definite exceptions here, like if you think about some of the moments in a game, something like Critical Role, right? Our favorite, both example and counterexample, is first season of Critical Role. There's some real, gravitas type moments because those people are actors and they can really deliver, they really get into character in a professional way because they're professionals. But they would do gravitas scenes sometimes that were not under a lot of strain, that were just emotional bonding moments. And since they're actors, they could unleash that. But 99% of us playing D&D are not actors. And so I don't think it's as easy for us to get into character unless we are just in the character in the modality of survival, where we're just like, I don't want to lose my character. And speaking in character, you say, I don't want to die. That's a form of RP that I think a lot of people can get into, and the way you can bring it out of them is with strain. Okay, so that is premise number 4. Now, if you give me all 4 of these premises, then I want you to give me this conclusion, which is right here. We should be using spawners. Okay, this is a justification for this video right here. This is saying, why am I even giving or offering this silly workshop in the first place? This is why. That chain of reasoning that I just went you through. And now we're going to get into spawners. Now, before we can really talk about the axis graph, let me just get a definition on spawners really quick. Okay, now you guys probably already know. I'm not talking about the comic book that, in some people's opinion, killed the golden age of comics. Spawn was amazing. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about spawners it's really a video game term, I suppose, which is a thing, place, effect, or something that is popping out bad guys, popping out little enemies. Could be a hole, could be a flame, could be a magical portal, could be an egg, could be all kinds of things. Bad guys come out of all kinds of things in all kinds of different scenarios, but as a general term, you just call them spawners. This is where things spawn. This also came from Quake, really brought the term spawning into the vogue. I think the id engineers really kind of helped cement this term into the video game lexicon, which is like you're spawning. It means you're popping back into the battle arena. You spawned, and this word was not really in use like that much before then. So this is a spawner in the video game sense brought into the tabletop design theory space, okay? So remember, from left to right, we're going to go easy to hard. And this is a breakdown of the thinking surrounding spawners, okay? So we're gonna go piece by piece here, and we're gonna jump in and sort of illustrate each piece. Okay, so here's our first piece, the how. How are they spawning? Emerging or forming? This is your first real decision as a GM. Okay, let's get a room going. Here's a room. Well, would you look at that? Here's an exit over here. There's a door. There is a cool like well in the middle, because there always is, right? A lot of great D&D rooms, you come in and there's some kind of weird water feature, right? And water features are always like, ooh, that can't be good, yikes. I wonder what's in it, right? So there's a water feature here. Okay, you've got some pillars holding up the corners. Now, will these little facts be salient? I don't know, we're about to find out. There's some stairs that you ascend to come into this room. It looks like I've created a little more of a cavern here because architecture just usually is not so freeform. So let's lean in on that. It's a cavern, and a lot of times just shorthand for cavern is just some squiggly lines. And then here we have this door. Maybe this door has some kind of big cool like iron bar on it. Like they're holding something in back here. This is some kind of cell. We're not going to get into that room, luckily. Then dots are dirt. Okay, now before we think about distance or how big this room is or any of that kind of stuff, we're not going to worry about that quite yet. So remember, our first thing is, does it emerge or does it form? This is your first decision. So your very first thing is, I'm going to use a spawner tonight in tonight's game. It's going to be great. The players are going to hate me. Okay, so your first question to answer is, are my monsters going to emerge or they're going to form? Emerging is like a fish man. Here he is. Woo, hello. And you guys know how much I love fishmen, right? There's Fishman. He's got these funny little flipper hands like this. He's got a little rib cage thing. He always has one little flippery hand on his little flippery spear. Okay, now why am I bothering to... He's got his knees locked, which is just against... that's not advised. You can pass out. Okay, so there's his fishy spear. He's got a net here. Now, why am I bothering to draw the Fishman? Because I'm telling you, when I draw something, even a silly drawing like this, it helps inform me. It reminds me what I'm doing. And okay, right away, what's Fishman gonna do? Well, he's gonna pop out of that water feature, right? I'm gonna make him short too, there we go. He's gonna pop out of that water feature. Boop! That's popping out. That's emerging. Right? Fish, and you can even use this in the language that you're playing the room. The fishmen emerge from the pool. Okay, this is a spawner. Now, what's forming? Forming, I'm going to think up like a sort of a, let's call it a water slime. Now, you guys know how I love to use these sort of little formless blob monsters and how they go along with different elements of nature. We're doing a lot of this in our Eberron game right now, these little guys. For some reason, I did the color first. I never do that. That's weird. Okay, so anyway. It's the internet, man. It'll make you do some crazy shit. I'll tell you what. All right, there we go. Boop, boop, boop. Here's his little watery sort of butt. And wherever he goes, he leaves these little trail. Okay, so this is number 2. A water slime. It does not emerge from the water. It forms. So a portion of this pool in this weird room goes, and it congeals, takes shape, flops out onto the floor, and you have a little water slime, or water elemental if you prefer that, a water slime, if you will, if you're asking Cyrus Draken. Okay, so there you go. It forms, it does not emerge. This is your first choice. This choice is going to start to inform how this spawner is going to play out, okay? So that's a pretty easy one. Now let's just put this guy here. Let's get rid of our first category. Okay, and then let's put this guy away and go back to our chart. Part 2. Let's grab it. Be lazy, right? There we go. When. This is probably one of the single biggest difficulty meters or adjustability elements that you can have when you're using spawners rather than a fixed number of enemies. When do the enemies appear? And remember, moving from left to right increases difficulty in all these different things we're going to talk about. So let's go back real quick. Emerge is easier than form. Why? Because usually things that are forming are more bizarre. We're familiar with things coming out of holes, right? We're familiar with things jumping out of the water. We're familiar with things falling from the sky. We're familiar with things coming through doorways. All that is like real world. We can kind of, oh yeah, I know how to deal with that. Things forming from something else is entirely in the realm of weird fantasy, horror, freak show. So it's much harder to instantly and intuitively know how to make it stop, how to overcome it. And that's why form is going to be harder than emerge. But now we're going to talk about the time factor. When do they spawn? And this is where we're going to get sassy, you guys. This is a huge decision that you're going to jot down in your journal when you use a spawner, and you're going to choose one of these versions. First one, easiest one, drama. For the sake of drama, you as the GM just say, as you walk into the room, your footsteps cause this pool of water to ripple slightly, and you see some ripples cascade across this ultra still pool of water. Right? All the players are thinking at that moment, oh crap, right? You've triggered something. This is a dramatic moment that you of the GM have simply chosen. Now a better one, an even easier one, could be when the water is touched. The water is touched. This is a dramatic moment. Boop. Thing happens. And spawn. Yes. Spawn guys. Now we're going to get to the last phrase. A last sort of piece of this phrase is another one of our categories. So we got to hold just a second. All right. Next one is alert. You've noticed that the stepping into the room causes ripples version. That kind of feels like an alert, right? An alert is a hypersensitive, conditional version of drama. And that's a good way to describe it. Conditional drama. So the first one is just, I as the GM decide when it feels cool at the right moment, fishmen jump out. It's just like that. Alert is a bit harder because what it does is it asks players to figure things out before they engage with things. This is definitely an earlier era mindset when it comes to dungeon design. In the earlier eras of the 70s and 80s, trying to get players to understand what was about to happen, not what was happening, was a big part of trap design, right? And this is where an alert comes in. You're seeing if they can avoid the alert, which they almost never can because they don't even know they're avoiding something. They're walking into a trap. Traps don't have signs that say don't make any noise. They want you to make noise, right? So avoiding an alert can be difficult. Drama is easier because as the GM, I might not feel the moment come up where I need the fishmen to jump out. So you're getting off the hook. See the fishmen, hook. I'm proud of that one. Next, we have event. An event is a thing that's happening because of the way that things are unfolding in here. So another thing you could have 3 orcs. These orc cultists who worship fishmen are in here. And they're getting ready like a big bucket of fish food to feed to the fishmen in this well, right? The moment that the fishmen are going to pop out is when they do that. This adds yet another level of complexity to things because it asks the players to come in, figure out what these orc cultists are doing, and figure out that something bad is probably going to happen when they do X, Y, Z, and then another thing is going to kick in. So you see, it's getting more difficult because the chances of avoiding it are getting lower and lower. There you go. Next we go. So this is just like a compound alert is one way of thinking of it. A series of variables that live inside the room that are even more difficult to figure out, that are probably going to unfold, that you will not be able to figure out, and it's going to add, in this case, 3 more enemies. Next one, round. 1 round is the amount of gameplay it takes for each player to take a turn and the DM to take a turn. That's 1 round. If the spawn occurs, boink, each round, this is probably the most common form of a spawner. This is the one that I use 90% of the time. Every round, X number of these things jump out. It's that simple. Now you really want to crank it to 11. This is the final level of difficulty. Every turn spawn. You realize how insane this is? Every time a player takes a turn, you spawn guys again. This is insane. This is insane. Let's say you're spawning 1d6 fishmen every player turn. Now, if you're rolling ones, the next player is only going to have 1 more fishman than that player did, assuming he didn't kill his foe. But if you roll a 6 and the guy doesn't kill his foe, you now have 7 inherited fishmen on your turn that are then compounded by another 1d6 fishmen, that are then compounded by another 1d6 fishmen. In 5 turns, you have the potential for having 30 freaking fishmen in this room. Now, this is insanely deadly, and time is going to swoosh down on you, and the players are going to be very careful with how they use the next few seconds, because this is much more like an exciting action movie. Do you remember that crazy stuff with Will Smith, iRobot, when all them like rubber skin robots is jumping out? And there's like hella those things. Zillions of them, climbing all up the walls and whatnot. That was a turn level spawn. Those things were just piling in. You say, Hank Inferno, how are players going to survive this stuff? Well, not by just being dummies and just trying to kill everything that keeps spawning. That is not how they're going to survive. They're going to have to start to get smart. They need to topple some pillars. They need to block the well. They need to plug the well. They need blah, blah, blah. And we're going to get into what these other axes are, because they are no longer able to just out horsepower your spawner. Okay, so drama, alert, event, round, turn. That's your when. Okay, that is your when are they going to spawn. Now let's look at our next axis. Where? You know what? I'm going to add, I think I already forgot. I'm such a pro. You know, when inspiration strikes me, I just go. I just fixed, dynamic, ascending. Okay, sorry. That's just, I had to add that little axis. Next we have where. Location, effect, or anywhere. Okay, so let's take this axis and put it into our scenario that we've been running. Remember, we're going to increase in difficulty from the left to the right. First of all, locations. This is the easiest one. It's the dang pool. Here, mofos. That's where them fishmen be coming out. You know what I'm saying? Right there. It's something players can figure out. Oh, look, fishmen are coming out the damn water. That's something you can grasp very quickly. The second one is weirder. Effect. Now imagine that not only do you have this sort of well or pool of water in the middle of the room, you also have these weird little coils of water that every once in a while like sort of drip upward from the floor to the ceiling. In the time that it takes a player to investigate that, to be curious about it, they realize that like little tadpoles are forming in this invert gravity water, and they're like, what is going on? And they look up and the little tadpoles hit the ceiling and instantly grow to full-size fishmen and flop down onto the floor. The figuring out adds the difficulty, because which ones are going to spawn how many? What even is the physical nature of this thing? How do we deal with a magical inverted gravity water tendril? What do we do with that? Put a bucket on it? I mean, I don't know. How do you dispel that thing? It's so much more question-inducing than just saying, hey, look, there's a well and fish guys are jumping out of it. That's just so dry and understandable. So once again, difficulty comes from how much understanding a cognitive load does it take to grasp the spawning system. And finally, you have the worst, which is anywhere. The main system that I use to do anywhere works like this. It just uses a clock. Actually, 3 is right here. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And this is 12, actually. There's one. Then I roll a d12. And let's say I rolled a 9. Then fishmen, how many of them I don't know, spawn right here. Then next round, I roll the d12 again. I get a 5. The fishmen spawn right here. This one is maximum difficulty because the players never know where the fishmen are going to appear. They're dropping out of these little fissures they never noticed in the ceiling, right? They don't know how to position the group in a safe way to keep the wizard away from the fishman, because the fishman could appear anywhere in the dang room at any given moment. And you want to make this even worse, you're not spawning fishmen, you're spawning boulders. The boulders fall on a clock that you roll to pick a random location in this room. This is not an understandable spawn system. It's random. So the players are just running around willy-nilly. So if you were spawning every round, and you were spawning anywhere in the room, and let's get back to the axes. And these things were forming, not physically emerging in a way that you can understand. You're maxing out difficulty on all these axes. They're forming. They're coming in every turn, and they appear anywhere. So much easier than things that sort of come out of holes that emerge in familiar ways, or that only occur when there's a GM drama moment they feel is appropriate, or has a fixed location. It's so much easier. You're starting to see how this axis of difficulty gives you a dial that you can crank the thumb screws on these buggers, depending on what your players are like in general and what their sort of state of energy may be. All right, now let's get into how many. We've got this axis, and like time, this is going to very, very directly, profoundly impact how difficult your use of spawners is going to be. First of all, fixed. Okay, when these guys appear, 4 appear. That's fixed. Four appear. Boop. Okay, it's been 1 round of play. 4 more fishmen jump out of the water. Hello, we're the next squad of fishmen. Again, it's about how easy it is to understand. And that is terribly easy to understand. Well, each round we have 4 more to deal with. Okay, prepare fireball, because you can do a fireball that can kill 4 of them. So we're sustainable right now. Very understandable. Next, you have dynamic. This could be like 2d4 up here. Now this one's getting a little crazy, because not only do the players not know how many of these things are going to jump out, you don't. And you're the damn GM. You are placing the difficulty of this room into the hands of the gods. Ain't that crazy? It's just like rolling a timer. Instead of using turns or rounds, you're going to roll a timer, which is even another way to compound how difficult this could be. You won't know when they pop out because you're going to make it dynamic. You're going to let the dice decide. Same with quantity. And then finally, and this is the evil one, this is nasty, you do ascending. The first time that the fishmen pop out, 1d4 appear. Then 1d6. Then 1d8. Then 2d6. Then 2d8. Then 1d12. And so on. If they're still battling this is not going to be pretty. What it means is that the players are feeling this sense that the swarm of fishmen coming out of this stinking well, or water elementals, is like onto them. They know that where they are, and they're calling everyone in. So in the beginning, it's just a few, right? Like fishman, 3 fishmen, then 6 fishmen appear, then 1 fishman, then 12 fishmen come out. Now, you could say as a GM, I'm going to cut it right here. This is too many frickin' fishmen, right? Or you could say, hey, this is how the room's designed. You're dealing with 30 fishmen now, guys. So you can see, number spawned is another critically important dial that you can turn to change the difficulty of your spawner. Now, finally, and I'm going to add it because I kind of forgot it. Look at this. Timer goes. Timer is kind of a meta one, right? Because both of these could be on a timer roll. And you could roll it, usually it's a 1d4. You guys all know about my suspense die stuff. I don't need to talk about it right now, but there we go. Repaired. Okay. Finally, the only question that the players really want to know, because they're not here to do game design, they're here to survive, get XP, and get loot. Boosh. This is how to make it stop. How to make it stop. And remember, we're going to ascend in difficulty. Okay? How do we stop the damn fishmen from filling this freaking room with fishmen? Number 1, plug. Plug up whatever is spawning them. Now, this can take so many different forms. with emerge. If emerge is the spawn type you're dealing with, then you can almost always plug it up. If goblins are pouring out of a small cave or out of a hole in the ground, you plug the hole in the ground. If the fishmen are jumping out of a pool of water, you cover the pool of water with plywood. Call it good. You bought yourself some time. But if monsters are forming, they're magically taking shape, much more difficult to believe that the concept of plugging an entry point is really going to stop this from happening. The easiest form of plugging is a door. There's a bunch of guys running in, you close the door and lock it. Now they can't run in. Second one, destroy the spawn point. Now in this case, it would mean filling it with boulders, which is kind of like plugging, right? But your spawn point might be a ship. It could be a portal, and the portal can be destroyed by using, crystal tips on crossbow bolts. You need to do 50 damage, and then this portal dissipates and they can no longer come through. See, this is why now you see the players only care about this final axis. How do we stop it? Finally, an event. This is getting harder and harder. The only way you're going to stop these fishmen from appearing is to kill all 3 of our orc cultists here. And it turns out they're nearly invulnerable. Anytime they touch water, they heal back to full HP. They use water magic. Maybe the 3 of them do some kind of G-force crazy stuff where they touch shoulders and they form a pyramid and make a vortex and all heal to full HP and they're invulnerable again. They're very, very tough, and until they're dead, the spawning will not stop. That's an event. We need an event to happen if we're going to stop the spawners. And then finally, dun 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 dun. Dun, 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 dun. None. There is no way to stop it. This is kind of like stormtroopers. There's no way to stop them from spawning. They just keep coming. They come in this door, they come in that door, they come down on rappelling things, they jump out of ships, they crawl up from the depths of the Death Star and shit freaking everywhere. They're like carpenter ants. There's no way to stop the spawner. So again, you've got these 4 choices, and when you make your choice, you're kind of telling yourself as a game master, this is how hard this crazy little fishman pool room is going to be. And you guys notice too that even on a silly little design like this, when you lean into it, there's plenty of decisions to make that can vastly affect not just the outcome, not just the nuts and bolts sort of what's it going to be like combat-wise of this room. You're also, by answering a bunch of your own questions, doing what I call leaning in. You're leaning in on what may seem like a very simple sort of formless little room concept, but by leaning in on it and adding these things like the whirlpools, the cultists, the pool itself, maybe it's both fishmen and the little water elementals. Maybe the water elementals are the things that are powering the fishmen. Maybe the fishmen ride them. I don't know. But then you also designed your D12 clock selection method, right? You also know that there's a door over here. Let me make it brown so you can see it and don't forget about it. There it is. That's probably going to be their target. Players are really intended to be running around here in a panic, doing all this fighting. Fishmen are closing in around this thing, trying to guard it because they don't want the players to get in there, because that's where the froghemoth is, and the great green emerald of the frog god is in there. And if it's stolen, then their people, the fishy people, will be defeated. All of this is leaning in on an extremely simple room idea, which was a blob with some stairs and a puddle in the middle. So as players come in, they ask, what are those pillars? What is that puddle? What are those fissures? What are those weird little fumaroles of water? Wait a minute, there's 3 weird looking froghemoth dudes in the corner, and then there's a ripple passing over the water, and then what's that door? There's so many different questions to ask. And your answers come from the fact that you've already leaned into your room idea. This is just a spawner used in a room. This could be anything. It could be a door, it could be a cave, it could be a portal, it could be a crystal, it could be a pyramid, it could be a hole in space-time, it could be the mouth of the frog god and the tadpoles are pouring out, it could be inside of a mental realm where there's floating stones, and every once in a while, your uncle appears, and then a clone of your uncle, and they're all growing teeth and their eyes are gouged out and they want to eat your soul. Okay, that one got a little strange. But this is thinking in spawners. Spawners take your game out of a fixed sense of what needs to be done in a room and completely opens it up, and in many of the cases puts you in a state where you, as the game master, don't even have full command of how difficult things are going to be, because you are letting this dynamic sense of what's going on take hold on the game. And so, it's never going to be the same way twice, right? It's always going to play out in different ways, which is amazing for you as the game master, right? And then B, also avoids this humdrum overuse of rest that players can be guilty of. And this feeling of like, well, there's 4 guys in here, so let's kill the 4 guys and move on. And some of that problem with humdrum. Now remember, nothing is more important than variety and rhythm in everything you do as a game master. So even the idea of a spawner, which may seem suddenly exciting and appealing, even that can be tempered with simpler encounters, where you just have one Odiug that's chewing on a dead body in the next room. Talk about a fixed encounter. It's just one monster doing one thing. It takes very little investigation, very little cognitive load on the part of the players. They're just like, oh God, look, and it's also ugly and has no morality, so let's just, done. That, you guys, is my deep think on the axes of adjustment involved in using spawners in your room designs. So you're moving into caverns, you're moving into castle rooms, you're moving into wilderness spaces, and you can ask yourself, what could give rise to an endless stream of enemies here? And then why? Why is there an endless stream of enemies? Are the players being pursued by a goblin army? Have they awoken this cult, which has thousands of members? Are they already fleeing some large force? Or have they activated a magical sort of source that is spewing forth all this badness? And as you begin to answer these questions one by one, you answer the questions the players are going to be asking. And in so doing, you're doing the magic, baby. You're game designing. You're the dungeon master at that point. So that's when you got to say to yourself, word up, killing this game. And that's it. That is my spawner workshop. Ingrid Bernal. That's me, Hanker Infernal, coming at you with that K knowledge. Okay, so that's it. So hopefully y'all getting some nice free time here on the solstice. The world, the planets, the seasons are in perfect alignment today. You can feel the energy, and there's a good energy. And that is a great segue to the sort of ending here. We're going to get into the sort of house cleaning element. I take my pen and put away my pen. I don't need that no more. Now we can get into the house cleaning element of this stream. So everybody, hey, thanks for sounding off in the comments. Let me get rid of Fairtail there. Okay, there we got rid of Fairtail. Great to have you. 90 of you or so hanging out today. That's perfect. Happy Father's Day, everybody. So hopefully you're getting a little bit of downtime on Father's Day if you're a father out there. Otherwise, maybe you're just chilling in the backyard today, enjoying some summertime weather, wherever you are, whatever you're doing. Throw a spawner into your next piece of game prep. Get it down in your journal. Just jot some of the details of how and why the spawners are happening. Make some critical decisions on how difficult the nature of the spawners are going to be. And that's all the questions you need to answer. You've designed your whole encounter. So give it a try. I hope it winds up being useful for you guys. Okay. Mindset change. We're done with the spawner workshop. Now I just want to holler at you guys. First of all, let's talk about what's going on up in here. Things have been going great. If you haven't been following the Runehammer Patreon, I always invite you to. It's $1. Throw it in. If you want to support for more than $1, that's really cool. There is some talk going around that Patreon is going to disconnect using APIs. So there might be some change that you're going to see in all your patronage if you use Patreon. So that should be interesting. Kind of trivial, though, honestly. We have been growing, though. The Shield Wall Runehammer has been growing on Patreon, and it's freaking awesome. And it's really outgrowing. I put the goal that's currently up there almost just as a sort of a pie in the sky kind of thing. But we are now threatening that huge goal, which is 1,000 members, 1,000 shields, all elbow to elbow, locked tight with iron between us and bad GMing. So we are closing in on that goal. So at first, I'm just like super grateful. Thank you, everybody. I'm psyched. But then also, I got to ask, how do I push this further? And this is where I wanted to talk a little bit about, like, what the hell's been going on? Also, we did a recent poll on Patreon, and overwhelmingly was answered that everybody really wants me to put a lot of effort into ICRPG 3rd edition, which I've been doing. I'm about 50 pages into the draft. It's all new everything. It's all new written. It's all new art. It's like I'm not recycling anything, so I want it to have a lot of value. It's far from done, so don't worry about if you feel like you just got 2E 3 months ago or something. It's all part of the collectibleness of it, and it would just be great. It's the definitive form of the game, and after having my current game is a 5e game, it is so great to return to the simplicity of ICRPG, and like sort of the cleanliness of it feels so great. It's like discovering it for the first time and having a blast with it. So that's the main thing I'm working on right now. I have very little distractions right now, except little fun projects on the side like building Gundams and just drawing for fun, making music here and there. But here's the thing. Here's the big whopper. This is probably the biggest thing since I started Runehammer. So because of the support for Patreon, and because of the nature of Philly. So you guys know I live in Philly now. So I live in this is most of my home that you're seeing behind me. This is my tiny little home. It's a really small space, and so I can't craft in here. I know, it's terrifying, right? I don't have a game table. I can't make a mess. I can't spill paint. And it's also like really weird to try to like stream and record when like, you got your the girlfriend and the cat like right behind you on the couch. It's like, it's a little strange. And so that's what I've been adjusting to since we've been living in this apartment. But we finally not have a solution, not only because of brain explosion, but because of the support of Patreon. God, what a long, boring intro that was. I am now looking for a freaking studio space in Philly. Like a little artist, a little, sort of janky, cinder blocky little artist studio where I can set up all my gear, make messes, get back to crafting, record daily videos, and live this life in a way that's separate from my home life. It's going to be so baller. I can't wait. Put a mini fridge in there. And because Philly is so cool, there's a lot of state subsidized little art studios that are really teeny, that are super cheap. So I'm so excited. So I've only looked at a few. It's just started. I've been riding my bike around all in the sun today, looking at some of these state-subsidized little art studio spaces, and they're in this old, cool, like old, ruined out, industrial buildings from the early 20th century. Some really neat stuff. So I'm hoping to score one of those in the next couple weeks, and you guys are going to be seeing a lot more of this ugly mug right here, because now here's the final one, the thing I wanted to talk about before I bail off of this stream, because it's been about an hour. Where have I been? Well, first of all, it has been weird to try to do a lot of streaming and stuff live right here in such a small apartment. So that's why I did the mapping marathon. Thank you everybody for that. We raised $1,500 for colorofchange.org. But also, I wanted to sort of send a shout out to everybody out there that everyone is probably experiencing exactly what I'm experiencing. Like it has been hard. Like this has been a tough time to be on planet Earth. It's an important time. Like a lot of important stuff is happening, and scary stuff as well, right? And then there's also like this anger problem. And I'm sure all of you guys are experiencing it. There's a lot of anger in the air right now. And people are angry for good reasons, honestly. And sometimes angry at each other. Friends sometimes angry at friends, brother against brother and stuff like that. Because there's a lot of heated energy right now in the air. I think there's a lot of concern and there's a lot of intensity in the world right now. And to be brutally honest, it has been tough to keep this kind of wacky, upbeat kind of vibe going. It's been really tough, some weeks, and I know you guys are going through this right there with me. It's just like a little overwhelming because you are angry. And I don't want to represent any particular point of view. I mean, I think you guys probably know where I stand, especially if you catch me, screaming at the clouds every once in a while on Twitter. Hey, why I oughta, When we all feel strongly about the things we believe in, but I don't think feeling strongly is what's hard. I think it's just the intensity of what's going on right now. People really want the world to be better, and they're also a little bit scared because we're right smack still in the middle of like one of the biggest challenges, at least that's ever happened in my life. And so you put all these things together, and it is not easy to just whistle zippity doo-dah and like get excited about the next D&D book and kind of just, go hang with your homies. I mean, some people aren't even allowed to go hang out with people yet. We just now started to get out. So a lot of, yeah, like High Priest is mentioning, like a lot of people's sessions are canceled, but it's not just that they're canceled, it's also that it's hard in your heart to feel that sort of loose, free feeling. But one of the reasons I wanted to come on today was partially because the Spawner Workshop. I've been turning that over my brain forever, and I finally traded in this teeny little journal. This is just too damn small. I wanted something that would go in my pocket. Just a sec. I wanted something that would go in my pocket, right? So I got this. It's like a little detective style journal, right? So, I mean, yeah, you can do little notes and you can do maps and, you know, do your normal drill in here. But it was just so, it's tiny. It was hard to work in something that small. So I traded it in for my Kermit the Frog colored larger notebook here. And just right away, sort of started having a lot more room to express myself in a more robust fashion with a lot more detail. And that's part of where Spawn Workshop came from. But 2 reasons to come online today. One was this for Spawner Workshop, and 2 was there is a feeling of good coming out of all this struggle we've been going through in 2020. I mean, we have been locked in our houses since freaking February. It's like 120 days or something crazy, 110 days, it's something nuts. It's just starting to lift, and even the lifting is scary. Like, you know, everybody's in a different situation, and there's a lot of complexity there, and then there's some anger mixed in, and there's some fear mixed in, and then we've got like a world justice movement happening, and people are trying to align themselves in that, and you want to do the right thing, but you also don't want to just lose yourself in it, and you want to be fired up, but you don't want to live an angry life. But even that is starting to feel like there's going to be a really positive outcome, even though it's very difficult. And even though the whole virus has been really difficult, I think there's going to be a positive outcome. I think it's going to change us. I mean, we took a break basically from life for like 3 months. That's going to profoundly affect us. And I think it's going to affect us in a positive way. We're going to be excited to see people again. We're going to be excited to go out and do basic things again. We're going to appreciate some of the privilege that we've been enjoying, because we're not locked in our houses, and everybody is not going to get the same chance to do that. And in the meantime, this is it. I want you guys to try your hardest to just be patient with each other, love each other, try to understand different points of view, be powerful and speak up when you need to, stay kind, get fired up when you have to, be nasty if you have to. But take care of yourself and take care of the person next to you. And if each person does that and we move down the chain that way, we'll all be taking care of each other and we won't even notice. And we're going to somehow make it to some good outcome. And honestly, I got to be totally straight with you guys. Some days I could not see that. It just felt so, oh my God, you know, and then, oh man, how am I making a living like doing this crazy stuff? And like I'm writing books and like, just like, oh, this is so nuts. And just drawing like little doodads and thingies all day. And like, oh man, what should I be doing? And all this kind of doubt and everything. But then today is different. The sun is beautiful. The seasons are changing. And solstice always has like a magical harmonic energy to it. And just like some of that optimism returned of saying, man, I actually have a feeling that even though some of this stuff is really dark, I mean, some of the stuff we're dealing with is very dark right now, that it's pushing towards some kind of good. And so I've got to double my efforts to keep just being me and bringing you guys together and doing what I do, which is stuff like spawners. I've talked about spawners for years, but I never really threw down on exactly what the dials are that I use on my spawners. And you know what originated this? It was about a month ago. We were fighting fire slimes that were coming out of like a burning blacksmith shop. So the blacksmith shop, the metal and the ferrous materials and the gunpowder in the blacksmith shop were burning so hot. It was like raw brick was on fire. That's how hot this fire was. It was so hot that all the molten metal was forming into these fire creatures, these little slimes that are like, and they come slurping out. The players right away said, oh no, it's a spawner. And I realized that they had gotten used to me as a GM, because remember, I just met these guys in February. And then they're saying, oh no, it's a spawner. Like he's doing that thing he does. And I was like, ooh, that can make a pretty cool video. And then brilliantly, our sorcerer cast Ice Storm inside the blacksmith shop to try to douse, not only douse the fire, but like insta cool all the metal and harden it right away and deny the fire slimes their spawning point. Which he did, but they still had the ones that were out to deal with. But I just thought it was brilliant. And that moment of a player saying, oh no, it's a spawner with like a little air quote, comic book bubble above his head, made me think to myself, that's like a thing. That's a thing I do. I should talk about it openly. So here we are today. Okay, so everybody, there's my big spiritual speech. There is my huge piece of news. Runehammer is going to have its own space here pretty soon, and that means a lot more fun, a lot more content, and a lot more focus. And I hope that all of you guys are sort of surviving. I know a lot of people lost their livelihoods in recent months, and now they're trying to come back. And I hope everybody can hang in there. And that's why I appreciate the support so damn much. I know that every single one of you is right there with me. Thank you for surviving and helping me survive. And we just got to keep going and find some kind of positive outcome to this, no matter where you may fall in all these different arguments we're experiencing every day. Just remember, you got to help somebody out. It doesn't even matter whose fault what is. If you see somebody stumble off the curb, you help them up. And that's the mindset that I think is going to take us to the next level. And that's where I want to go, is the next frickin' level. Keep it real, you guys. Never steal. You're always going to get a good ass deal. My name is Hankrin Fernale, Ingrid Bernal. You're going to be seeing more of me. So I hope you like this crazy mug right here. I got my Fozzie Bear hairdo going. I don't know when I'm going to get a haircut. I don't care about haircuts. I care about bone-crushing, ass-kicking D&D and the shield wall, elbow to elbow, keeping it real. Roll that 1d4 timer. Know your spawners. Use them. I'm just going to keep on pointing at you, and I'll see you on that old internet, you guys. All right. Hang loose. I'll see you next time. Let's get on out of here. Later.